Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. I'm David Menzies and my co-host, You know, folks, when it comes to intelligence, some say she's turbocharged. Others say she's supercharged. I just call her a tower of power. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
Dave, my eyes are starting to water.
Oh, well, that's what happens to me when I encounter a skunk out in the bush. So I hope that's not the case here.
No, I don't know what happened there. Maybe my emotional response was something that my brain could not control there. But thank you for that very kind introduction. David, how's it going? How was your weekend?
Oh, it was fantastic. We went out to Niagara Falls for a preemptive 30th anniversary, which Lady Menzoid and I will be celebrating later this month. Yeah, we got married back in 1991 on August 25th, one day before the Macho Man had his nuptials in the ring at SummerSlam. Unfortunately, my wedding was far more boring. Nobody came into the ring and smashed that chair over my head.
You know what, though? Your nuptials lasted longer, too. So there's something to be said for that as well.
Oh, yeah, 30 years. A lot of people didn't predict 30 minutes, Sheila.
You know what?
I don't know what we did right or wrong or what have you. But so, and we went to, of course, you know, I guess the world's honeymoon capital. That's Niagara Falls. And I got to tell you, you might recall, Sheila, last March when the pandemic shut down and Niagara Falls looked like a set out of The Walking Dead. It was empty. All the attractions were shut down. I think we saw 5 tourists at the falls. I'm telling you, on the weekend, it was packed. You know, it was another sign things are coming back because this is the #1 tourism destination in Canada. I think it gets like 35 or 38 million visitors per year. That wouldn't have been the case in 2020, certainly. But it was a good sign to see things coming back. And you know, it's a lot of people criticize Niagara Falls for being so cheesy, you know, with all the wax museums and the haunted houses.
I love that.
You know, I do too. And you know what? I'll tell you something, Sheila. Well, you can't go across the border right now to Niagara Falls, New York. But when you can, it's a very sad, depressed, dilapidated place. Even before COVID, the one bounty of Ontario versus New York State was that we got on the right side of the geography to see the falls, whereas in New York State, you're behind the falls. And you can see remnants of Niagara Falls, New York, trying to do the Clifton Hill thing. And it's just a bunch of closed up buildings. It's very sad. And what I'm getting to is better cheesy than no cheese at all, right? So there you have it.
I love a good cheesy town with a cheesy attraction. I'm from northeastern Alberta. We just get like big, huge rings of garlic sausage and put them up in the middle of town, big, huge pierogies. That's what we do. We put oversized animals and things in town, and that's our attraction. So I love cheesy.
Oh, yeah. And you know, it's funny. We're walking past House of Frankenstein. I've never seen a bigger line to get in there. And they have this, I don't know who writes this stuff, but it's this broadcast they play to the people walking by Clifton Hill. And one of the lines that stood out was, he's not exactly alive, not exactly dead. And I'm thinking, how many political leaders in Canada does that apply to right now?
Yeah. Is that Jean Chrétien? Are they waiting in a line to see Jean Chrétien?
There's a punchline there, but I dare not say it. So there you go. But Sheila, I guess at this point, you usually weigh in because you are a bear of much bigger brain than I to tell the folks what we are trying to do on the various platforms that we are on which might be a little abbreviated today, I understand from Mr. Producer.
Yes, that was my last message from Justin. I am out of communication with the office, so we have to play telephone, telegraph, tell David if I want to hear something from Justin. But it sounds like we are not on Odyssey or Super U today, which is too bad because I very much like both of those platforms, and both of those platforms give you the ability to support the work that we do as creators by leaving us tips in various different sorts of ways. And on most days, we are on Odyssey and Super U. But right now we're currently just streaming on YouTube and Rumble, and we used to be able to accept super chats on YouTube, but they don't allow us to do that anymore because I guess we talked about how YouTube censored the president. So they're like, oh, we're going to censor you without a sense of irony whatsoever. So YouTube completely deplatformed us, demonetized us. We're not completely deplatformed. Let me correct myself. We are completely demonetized, and what they did was try to demoralize us, but we have not abandoned the platform because we have 1.5 million people who watch us over there. So we want to continue to talk to them. And if YouTube doesn't want me, that's how you get more of me, to be honest. So we're still broadcasting on YouTube for the time being. We'll see how long that is. But on most days, you can still support us on those other platforms when we stream over there. And they have a special way that you can tip us as creators.
You know, it's funny what you say, the former president of the United States, Sheila, being censored on social media. Not so much the leaders of the Taliban, though. That's okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to infringe upon their free speech. It is astonishing. Every time, Sheila, since this COVID-19 thing began, we are in a crazy world. I always ask the same question. Are we at peak crazy yet? I don't think we are with the way the world is unfolding, especially since who's in the White House right now.
Well, yeah, especially when you see some of the responses from both the media and political leaders to what's unfolding in Afghanistan. You're like, no, I thought last week was crazy, but no, this week is even worse. And it's, oh, Justin just adjusted me on the fly. That was kind of neat. But when you can still have the mullahs in Iran, the old death to America guys, yeah, and the America's Great Satan Taliban guys on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, whatever, those guys can exist on social media. But if you're a conservative, that's verboten. That's the political discourse that we exist in right now.
Unbelievable. But we should get right to the hopper. I have never seen a topic page so jam-packed.
Oh, it's so full. I was like, we're going to get to two of these things. Sorry.
Oh, and I already got told by producer Justin that we don't have one particular topic on the docket. But speaking of Justin, we have something about that other Justin Trudeau, that is. He showed up at an event and, let's let the video tell you the reception he got. I like it. Yeah, the part I liked, of course, was not the cheering and clapping, but those boo birds doing the booing. And you look at his face these days on the campaign trail, Sheila, and I'm sensing, I might be wrong, I'm sensing a little buyer's regret about going forward with this election. We were told for, almost 2 years now, let's not get into confined spaces because of COVID. And now we're going to do exactly that in terms of going into schools and community centers and whatnot to cast our ballots. And we were, and also nobody, I think, well, clearly he didn't, saw how disastrous things are unfolding in Afghanistan. That is the proverbial October surprise happening in August. When people ask him the question, are you going to step down unless you get a majority, there's fear in his eyes now, Sheila, because I think if I was the Prime Minister, and I think there are senior Liberals that advised him to do this, just carry out your mandate, because we're still in this whole COVID pandemic thing. The NDP has sworn they're not going to bring down your government. Jagmeet Singh has propped them up every time.
They're getting everything they want.
Yeah.
So why would they bring down government? They're basically in charge at this point.
That's right. And I think if there is another Liberal minority, and I think that's the best we can hope for, to tell you the truth, I think the knives might be out for Justin Trudeau, and there'll be a move afoot to get a new leader. Maybe Carney, maybe Freeland, who knows? What are your thoughts, Sheila?
Yeah, I think this was so politically ghoulish. At the same time, he's telling us it's too dangerous for most of the country to go about their lives. And Alberta, as we return to normal, we're getting scolded by the former graphic designer turned health minister, the experts in charge. They're scolding us because it's too dangerous for us to hold rodeos and go back to school and just be normal. But the Liberals are campaigning, like full hard campaigning. You saw how many people were there. I can't go to a rodeo, but you can go to a Liberal fundraiser. Sorry, that doesn't work. It doesn't compute. But this has been the story of the entire pandemic, where the restrictions break down political lines. So BLM, fine. Rodeo, no. Anti-lockdown protest, no. A Black Lives Matter riot somewhere, that's perfectly fine. Or a Liberal Party fundraiser, again, perfectly fine. But, I look at this all in the context of what's unfolding in Afghanistan, and we'll get to that in a second, because I think from this very same event, the liberal racism reared its ugly head. That's just, scratch a progressive, find a racist just under the surface every single time. Where are Justin Trudeau's intelligence briefings people? Like, are they briefing him at all? I mean, I think for most casual political observers who pay attention to these sorts of things, you knew Afghanistan was going to fall. Now, I think if you were the Prime Minister, you probably had a pretty good idea of the timeline when that would be, where you could, I don't know, do something to get our allies and interpreters out instead of allowing the Taliban now to go door to door and butcher them in their homes, which some reports are saying that's what's happening in Kandahar. So how did Justin Trudeau ignore intelligence briefings, if he's getting them, to call an election on the very day that Kandahar has fallen, where we need our government to pivot to getting our allies out instead of allowing them to be butchered? I've been talking to some of our veterans of Afghanistan, and they said for them this feels like people because it's true, they served with these guys. They just live in a different place. Instead of all coming back to CFB Edmonton, some of them stayed behind with their families. That's how they feel about their interpreters and fixers on the ground, and they know that they are going to die. And for them, it is an ultimate betrayal. And where is our Prime Minister on this? Oh, he's holding a fundraiser in Coburg.
Yeah. Oh, where is our Prime Minister on this, Sheila? He's handed this off to the bureaucracy that we're sending out electronic forms to fill out in a region and cities in Afghanistan that it's already in chaos. That the ability to fill out even emails is not an option, because like you said, a lot of these people are hiding for their lives. You see people going to the airports, grabbing onto the landing gear, falling to their deaths from airplanes, because what do they have to lose? They're probably going to get beheaded or hung in the streets, which the Taliban is doing right now. And I think, Sheila, yes, Afghanistan, it's a world away, and as one pundit said, this is where empires go to die, and 'twas ever thus. I think this issue is going to stick to these Liberals, because we are abandoning thousands of people that counted on us. We promised them. We made them a promise. And now it turns out that Canada, the US, other Western nations, I guess we're just fair weather friends, that all this work we did in Afghanistan, it's just amazing. We're coming up less than a month to the 20th anniversary of September 11th, which is why we went into Afghanistan in the first place. And how perversely ironic that on the cusp of the 20th anniversary, Sheila, that all we fought for, all those lives that were lost, it was for nothing. Now the Taliban is coming in so empowered, and I'm so frustrated by this, and I hearken back to a quote that somebody with the Taliban said post 9/11 when the Americans and the Western allies were first coming in, and it was a chilling quote, and it's coming true. And what he said, Sheila, was, the Americans have the watches, we have the time. So maybe a year, a decade, hey, a century, we're out of commission, but we're here for the long game. And when you're gone, we come back, and look what's happened. And furthermore, I would say with Afghanistan falling like this, I think the one country in the world that must be incredibly stressed out right now in terms of the geopolitical dynamics changing is Taiwan. Because is Taiwan thinking, yeah, sure, you're obligated to protect us, America, but when the chips are down and the Chinese are coming, are you really going to do so? And I think that is the next region of the world to look at, Sheila, when this Afghanistan, fiasco, and there's no other way to describe it. And after you weigh in, we must go to Garneau's comments on Afghanistan. I'm not going to give it away, folks. It is astonishing. You will not believe what this fellow said. But as Justin finds that, can you please weigh in?
Sure. Justin Trudeau's solution to all of this is, we're going to bring in 20,000 refugees. 20,000 refugees we can't vet because of what's happening on the ground. This is a catastrophe. We had months to identify our interpreters and allies and fixers on the ground. We didn't do anything. Actually, we had years to get them out. They've had children there, and now their children will die. There's a picture from Mercedes Stevenson. She posted it to her Twitter account, and I thought about it when I saw it, how that image of little Alan Kurdi drowned on the beach changed the game for Stephen Harper's Conservatives.
It's true.
During the 2015 campaign. And as it turns out, Alan Kurdi's father did not have clean hands there. But that death hung around the neck of the Conservatives. Yeah. Mercedes Stevenson tweeted a picture of our interpreters' children sleeping at the airport as Justin Trudeau declined to further evacuate Canadians. Those are our interpreters' children. They could be dead, they could be alive, we don't know, but we know that they were, as Mercedes points out, they were told to go to Kabul. They were trapped without security, money, or food, and Justin Trudeau promised to help them. The fate of those children, after they were told to go to the airport to be evacuated, that should hang around the necks of Justin Trudeau. These children are innocent, and not only that, their parents have clean hands here. They were helping us, and they could die for that. They likely will die because they helped us. This is not like the Alan Kurdi situation where Alan Kurdi's father had unclean hands involved in human smuggling. That's not what this is about. These are people we promised to help, and we left them to die. And that should hang around the Liberals' necks. And Justin Trudeau's solution is to bring in 20,000 other people. Get these people out first.
100%, Sheila. And when you say left them to die, look at that. You must be psychic. That is a headline on the Toronto Sun today. Look at that family on the airport tarmac. Doesn't even look like an airport anymore. It looks like a pedestrian mall. Left to die. And it's not going to be a humane death either. And this is what I don't understand, Sheila. We know who these people are. We've been working with them for years, these interpreters and fixers. Compare that to Roxham Road, where we don't know who these people are. A lot of them don't have paperwork. A lot of them are not even legitimate refugees or economic refugees. And actually, judging by some of the designer clothes they wear as they freely cross the border, as the RCMP carries their suitcases, they don't seem very economically hard done by either. So we'll let those thousands of people just sally forth into our border, no questions asked, and yet our allies who put their lives on the line, who we know they're not terrorists, we know they're not coming in with infectious diseases, we say, well, you know what, did you fill out the form yet? And then we'll get on it. This is gross, and like I said, Sheila, this issue is not going away. I just wonder, had Justin Trudeau known that the fallout it's still front page news, would he still have called that election on Sunday? I think, like I said, maybe a little buyer's regret. This is the October surprise in August.
I think he would have called the election because I think he's an opportunistic ghoul. I think he doesn't care about these people. He only cares about winning a majority. And that's what he thinks. He thinks that he can campaign. The media is bought and paid for. They're not going to try to attack him on this issue. This should be front and center. Every campaign, stop. What are you going to do to get our allies out now? You know what he did? You know what the Canadian government did when they said, go to the airport in Kabul? They rounded up all of our allies and put them in one place where they can be killed. They made it easy for the people trying to kill them to find them and kill them because they're waiting on the tarmac for Canadian help that never came. And that should be asked at every single Liberal campaign stop, but it won't be because the media won't ask, and the ones that will, like us, they're not letting us in.
You know, it's unbelievable, Sheila. That's a great point you just made. And the reason why I think this is going to resonate with Canadians during this election campaign. I mean, say what you will about taxes, about climate change policies, etc. Those are not matters of life and death. And this is to friends, to allies. I, as a Canadian, I am ashamed. I mean, if somebody came up to me on the street and said, why did your country promise us safe passage? I mean, is your word not your bond? I wouldn't have anything to say to him. This is a disgrace. And I don't, for the life of me, understand why paperwork is so important that it trumps getting people out of a quagmire where they face execution.
I've gone through some of the missing paperwork for Syrian refugees. They literally didn't care. Some of them were, involved in terrorist organizations, and all they did was say, well, they forced me, so I'm a real refugee. And that was good enough for the Canadian government. We've done multiple stories on the failings of the refugee examination of the Syrian refugee influx. But with our friends and allies who helped us on the ground in Afghanistan, all of a sudden we've got to make sure every single box is checked. Like you said, we know who these people are. They're fully vetted. They were embedded with our soldiers. We should be getting them out. We should be getting their families out. We're not doing anything to help them. And who would ever help us again? If the Canadians rolled into another country and we were there to do, support a UN mission or do some aid work, would you ever sign up to help them? Even if they were helping to rebuild your country, would you ever help them? No, because they're going to abandon you. That's the legacy of Afghanistan now. It's disgraceful.
And here, Sheila, is the exclamation on this fiasco. Let's go to some video of Mr. Garneau and see what he has to say in terms of the new boss in town, namely the terrorist organization known as the Taliban.
The U.S. had warned the Taliban if Afghanistan was taken by force, it would not be recognized internationally. Will Canada refuse to recognize a Taliban government?
Well, thank you, Katie, for the question. I would say to you, it's early days. Right now, we want to see what happens. The country has essentially surrendered to the Taliban. The Taliban is saying that it wants to run as a government, but we're going to wait and see. It's too early to answer that question.
You're waiting to see. Are you going to treat the Taliban with credibility?
Well, we have to see how they behave since they have taken over the country. Certainly, their behavior was totally unacceptable for the short time that they were in charge after the Russians left about 20 years ago. So we'll wait and see.
Oh, Sheila, am I hearing things? We're going to wait and see. It's too early to answer that question. We're going to see how they behave. Is this guy out of his mind? Is he still in space or something? Sheila, there's only one correct answer to that question. No, they're terrorists. Of course we're not going to recognize them. What is he thinking, Sheila? And by the way, in the hours since he made that statement, has he issued a retraction or a clarification? This is outrageous.
What an absolute disgrace. For context, for Mark Garneau, since he must forget, 40,000 Canadians served in Afghanistan. 158 of them died. Thousands were left psychologically and physically damaged because they served in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban. And what an absolute disgusting thing for Mark Garneau to say that we might recognize them as legitimate, which means that we deal with them the same way we deal with any other legitimate democratically elected government in the world. That's a slap in the face to 40,000 Canadian servicemen and women and their families who made the sacrifice to go over there in the interest of freedom.
And Sheila, that quote, we'll see how they behave. We know how they behave. We
know how they're currently behaving. They're killing people right now because they allied with us.
Yeah, they're stringing up people with nooses just for having a different political opinion. Others, for smaller transactions or perceived transactions, they're having their hands or their feet amputated. What does this guy think he's talking about? See how they behave? I'm surprised he didn't say something equally as stupid as, we'll see if they're going to adhere to COVID-19 protocols in terms of social distancing and masking. This is outrageous. You know, it's like saying, I've got a fishbowl full of piranhas. They haven't been fed for 3 days. Well, how do you think they're going to behave if I throw a slice of bacon in the aquarium? We know the answer to that question. We're not supposed to negotiate with terrorists, and these guys are amongst the most odious, egregious terrorists on the planet right now. And for him to say we're going to see how they believe, does he think there's going to be some reform movement in the Taliban ranks? I can't believe what I'm seeing here, Sheila.
We should give them some money for feminist programs. I cannot wait to see the sheer volume of money that we are going to give to the Taliban for aid work. The foreign aid money, I'm sure, is already being considered dished out to the Taliban government, and it will go to terrorist activities against our friends and allies, including our interpreters we left behind there. The Taliban shot little girls for trying to go to school.
Yeah.
What sort of come to Jesus moment does Mark Garneau think that they had since then?
You know, Sheila, here's the tragedy. For a very relatively small military force that was in place by the West, and by the way, the Afghans have been slaughtered in the tens of thousands fighting, even being denied from the administration their paycheck sometimes, ammunition, severe shortages there. So they have, pulled their weight. But what I'm getting at is that we had, and when I say we, the West, a very relatively small amount of military boots on the ground there, and it was working. And then we withdrew it, and it collapsed like a house of cards. This did not have to happen. That what we had in place was indeed working, Sheila.
Here's my concern. The Taliban at this point may be better equipped than the entire Canadian military. given what the Americans left behind, the technology the Americans left behind, the technology the Americans had equipped the Afghan government and the military with, that is all now in Taliban hands. Think about that. Just think about that. Like when the Soviets equipped the Mujahideen and then spawned Osama bin Laden, we just have to wait a little bit because the Taliban is in control of American technology now. And think about what they can do with that when they have an entire country to stage their terror attacks from now.
That's an excellent point, Sheila, and a tragic one at that. Two more issues related to the Taliban. Well, this is interesting. A little video here. Trudeau saying that the Taliban needs to step up. Oh, my goodness. What does he mean by that? Mr. Producer is searching for it right now, Sheila. And while he's searching the other video, you must see, folks, the U.S. calls for an inclusive Taliban government. This is the most misogynistic organization in the world. Like you said, Sheila, little girls being shot for having the temerity to go to school. And the U.S. is calling for an inclusive Taliban government. Incredible. So let's see if we can get those two. We have that one. Let's throw to that right now, Sheila.
Additionally, the UN Security Council issued a joint press statement earlier today calling for a new government that is united, inclusive, and representative, including with the full and meaningful participation of women. The Council spoke with one voice to underscore that Afghanistan must abide by its international obligations, including to international humanitarian law, and ensure the safety and security of all Afghans and international citizens.
Oh, international law. Gee, do you think a terrorist organization might, Sheila, violate international law? I think that is the very being of a terrorist organization, to violate the law, international, municipal, regional, or national. And this business about being inclusive, do we have any estimates of, I don't know, how many people of the Afghanistan trans community is going to be part of this government? This is rubbish. I can't believe this guy can say this with a straight face.
The only point, I think, in all of their actions where the Taliban might achieve gender parity is in the number of men and women that they kill. I think that's where they might equal out. I'm old enough to remember the world looking on in horror, seeing those women forced into those blue burqas where you could only see their face or their eyes, and it was mesh, because even seeing their eyes was too much. Cloaked head to toe in those blue burqas against their will, and everybody looked on in horror, saying this is a human rights violation. And now we have people who claim to be credible in the American government saying, these guys, all we have to do is nudge them towards feminism. The people, again, who enslaved women, shot little girls for trying to go to school. The religious police are out in full force right now, enforcing the burqa, forcible conversions to radical Islam. That's what's happening right now. And we have these idiots, each one dumber than the next, wanting to sell their failure as some sort of gift of hope that the Taliban might change. That's why they're doing this. These people absolutely failed. The Taliban has taken over. And instead of admitting we failed, they're saying, no. They're changed. They're different. And that's why we're letting them do this.
Unbelievable. And folks, to Sheila's statement, one dumber than the next, let's go to that video of Prime Minister Trudeau.
My follow-up, will you recognize the Taliban government, or will, like the U.S., will you refuse to recognize them, and will military and development aid be cut off because of what's happening in the country?
Right now, our expectation and demand of the Taliban is that they permit, first of all, an end of violence and hostilities, and restore order to those who want to, for those who want to leave Afghanistan. We need to see the Taliban step up and permit an evacuation of those who want to leave. And that is what we are expecting of them. And that, quite frankly, is part of the statement that Canada and many other countries released last night.
Stepping up, Sheila, stepping up in the framework of the Taliban is for the months and years ahead, now that they are so emboldened and there are growing numbers and there are people from all over the world with like-minded terrorism ideals coming to Afghanistan now to be part of the party. Stepping up for them means plotting future 9/11s, not about having an inclusive government. I mean, what is the Prime Minister thinking?
What's happening in Afghanistan right now is a propaganda victory, the likes of which the radical Islamists around the world could not have ever imagined. Yeah. Right now, they hold more territory than when the Afghanistan war first began, because the Northern Alliance does not exist anymore. They basically have control of the entire country. And Justin Trudeau has specifically not ruled out sending these people development aid. We know he doesn't have a problem sending development aid to terrorist-linked organizations. He returned funding to the refugee organizations that are linked to Hamas after Stephen Harper cut it off. So he doesn't have a problem. And I guarantee you, he's going to dish out money to these terrorists under the auspices of feminist human rights and developing feminism in Afghanistan, because obviously they need it. We're going to be sending the money for abortions that's going to end up in ammunition. That's what's going to happen here. And this idea that the Taliban should permit evacuations, even if the Taliban did, which they won't, because that's incredibly stupid. The Taliban never would do that. So what, we send them to the airport again? And the Canadians never show up to get them, right?
Unbelievable. And you know, Sheila, I mentioned earlier in the show that we're just a few weeks away from the 20th anniversary, the grim anniversary of September 11th. And I really fear that this upcoming September 11th, given what we're seeing in Afghanistan right now, the symbolism, because that's what these thugs and terrorists thrive on, of doing another major terror attack, especially in the United States, on the 20th anniversary of September 11th. I'm predicting that is going to be a red alert day, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but then again, Sheila, we are dealing with the Biden administration. The idea that they would make that a red alert day might be too presumptive of intelligence. But I truly fear for this day coming up. I hope I'm 100% wrong. I hope these guys are too disorganized and they don't have the goods. But you know they've got that date circled on the calendar, and I really fear in the weeks ahead what's going to happen.
You know, I was just thinking about who is on the Liberals' terrorism list and who isn't. And it's funny because you mentioned earlier we don't negotiate with terrorists, and we don't. We just give them money. We just give them $10.5 million, right, Omar Khadr? We don't negotiate. We're just like, here's your cash. But, when you think about who's on the terrorism list, the Canadian government right now will not rule out sending development aid to the Taliban. They will not rule out legitimately dealing with the Taliban as a legitimate government. And yet they put the men's drinking club of the Proud Boys on the terrorism watch list. Yeah. That's where the Liberals' focus has been. Turning political enemies into terrorists and legitimizing actual terrorists.
Yeah, not only in the case of our homegrown terrorist, Omar Khadr, not only giving him a $10.5 million check for hurt feelings, but apparently turning a blind eye to the no-fly rule, which I thought he was on. Remember when he had to go from Alberta to, I think, Nova Scotia for a university speaking gig, and our big boss man, Ezra Levant, went to the airport as well. And how did that turn out? Oh, yeah, the police descended upon the airport, basically to tell Ezra not to ask any more impolite questions of a terrorist, a self-confessed murderer. Again, Sheila.
At the airport. Literally at the airport.
Who should be on a no-fly list.
Everybody gets frisked and loved up by strangers at the airport because of the actions of people like Omar Khadr. excuse me if we're a little bit bothered the fact that he's able to get on a plane with us and fly across the country.
And you know, if you were pilot or co-pilot, Gunn, Reid, how would you feel in the cockpit, Sheila, that guy is in the plane? Did they even know about that? Were they warned? Because I'm saying, I don't care if this costs me my job. I'm not flying this bird. No chance. Not with him in it.
Well, think about the stewardesses or flight attendants. I suppose I'm being sexist right there, but think about the flight attendants who had to wait on this guy and give him drinks and his club soda or whatever. Think about them. They had to know who he was. I think they did. I'm sure they did.
I don't know, but our Johnny on the spot, Justin, he has found the video evidence. In case you think that we are exaggerating, folks, check it out.
Word. Can I talk to you for a minute?
Can we take a selfie together?
If you want.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a couple questions? How did you get on the plane? I thought you were on the no-fly list.
See, this is exactly what we figured would happen. Why don't we go ahead and walk away from toxic things that are hurtful?
Why don't you? But how? But aren't you on the no-fly list?
Is there security?
For me or for him?
Yeah, for filming a person when that's really not an okay thing to do. So please. Yeah.
Can I ask you why you won't let the widow have access to some of the money you got?
Excuse me, officer, he's harassing us.
I'm not harassing anybody. That's a convicted Al-Qaeda terrorist right there who just flew on an airplane.
Okay, sir. Well, he's entitled.
He's entitled to do what?
He's entitled to leave the airport.
Yeah.
That's good, thanks.
Excuse me, sir.
Why you that's assault. Get your hands off me. Why have you never renounced your father's terrorism?
I don't understand.
Why have you never renounced your father's terrorism?
Okay, just walk. We need to go.
Because we're not under Sharia law.
Let's just walk to the car. Come on.
Where have you stashed the rest of the money? Why don't you feel an obligation to pay money to the widow whose husband you murdered and the 2 children?
This is an airport. There's a public place.
Exactly. That's why I'm filming.
And we're just trying to move. And your proximity.
She's touching me. That's battery.
Okay, no, it's not.
Yes, it is actually.
You go ahead.
My hands are open.
That's a terrorist. That's an Al-Qaeda terrorist right there.
Sir.
Al-Qaeda terrorist. It's an Al-Qaeda terrorist right there.
Okay.
Al-Qaeda terrorist right there.
Okay. Go ahead. Just go on. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir?
Yes. Yeah. Why are you touching me?
You're impeding someone from leaving the building.
No, I'm not. You're impeding me from leaving the building. What's your name and badge
I'll give
number?
you my card, sir. Okay?
Give it to me.
I will give it to you, sir. You're very close to being arrested. You understand me?
And you're very close to getting a civil lawsuit for assault and battery.
Don't jaywalk, sir. Crosswalk's back there, okay? Am I clear? Don't jaywalk.
What are you stepping on me for?
Doing your job, sir. Doing your job.
And what job is that?
Keeping the public safe.
Whose safety was in breach there?
Everyone's safety, sir.
You're a goddamn liar, and you know it. You're a disgrace to that badge, and you're a disgrace.
I'm proud of what I do, sir.
You're proud of defending a terrorist?
I'm proud of keeping people safe, sir.
Safe from whom? I was furious.
Well, Sheila, I never feel rage when I see that video. I should say, I always get enraged. There were so many great Ezra lines. That was the boss in all his glory. I love it when the handler says, "Is there security?" and Ezra says, "For him or for me." And then the cop saying, "You're very close to being arrested." Allegedly for Ezra jaywalking, because folks, that's a capital crime, I think. Jaywalking. jaywalking in an area where I didn't even see traffic. And Ezra says, you're very close to a lawsuit for assault and battery. And, you know, Sheila, as we've said time and time again during the pandemic with the way some law enforcement acts, probably the most odious being the Montreal Police Service, we try to back the blue, but look at those two stupid cops not understanding the law, not understanding how the practice of journalism is a thing here. We're not North Korea. You can't physically detain someone unless that person is under arrest, and Ezra committed no crime. And yet the multi-million-dollar massacre aficionado gets to walk free to spread his filth at some university in Nova Scotia. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was Ezra at his best, cops at their worst, and the left-wing enablers of Omar Khadr behaving exactly how you'd expect them to. Yeah. He's the innocent victim. People are dead because of him, Omar Khadr, but he's the innocent victim, and heaven forbid he ever be held accountable in public for it.
You know, I think I have an idea for the Justin Trudeau Liberals, Sheila. All expenses paid, of course. Why don't we send Omar Khadr over to Afghanistan as Canada's goodwill ambassador? Maybe he might bring about, you know, the opportunity for change and diversity and women's rights and whatnot. What do you think about that? And by the way, if he fails, no skin off my nose.
I don't think we want Omar Khadr back in Afghanistan getting the band back together, if you know what I mean. You know, speaking of go back to Afghanistan, Justin, I know I cannot communicate with you, but I'm going to ask you for this. And if you can't pull it up, then David will tell me. But would you mind, speaking of going back to Afghanistan, would you mind bringing up that clip of the racist liberals in Coburg from last night?
Yeah. Sheila, yeah, we showed the clip. Your take.
Okay, I don't know if you could hear that there, but there was, thank goodness, again, Mercedes Stevenson caught this and pointed it out. There was a man there who was upset with the mask rules and the state of the economy. Yeah, me too, buddy. And he says he emigrated to Canada. He doesn't like Trudeau's leadership, so he's the wrong kind of immigrant for Justin Trudeau. This one fully integrated and cares about freedom and the economy. And liberals from across the street yell at him and tell him to go back to Afghanistan and to leave then. You know, Afghanistan, where they're currently butchering people right now. That's what the liberals would have happen to you because you disagree with how they're handling the economy. These people are nothing but racists. They only like immigrants if immigrants vote along party lines. They don't want free-thinking immigrants who care about freedom, who care about the economy, who care about government accountability, all the reasons that we expect people to want to come to our country. If you care about those things, well, the liberals would have you go back to the country you were a refugee from to face certain death. That's how much they care about immigrants.
Gee, Sheila, that seems very unliberal of them, doesn't it? Go back to Afghanistan? Yikes. Mm-hmm. You know, but and, you know, I just wonder, did anyone get arrested for making impolite statements? You know, the police, because Coburg, if you recall, folks, for last summer and part of this summer, the beach was fenced off. It's one of the most beautiful sandy beaches, great body of water, because of, well, you know, it's a COVID super spreader event. And people, including Tamara Ugolini's father, were arrested for going on to the beach. There was another way to access it, which was evidently legal. And I was warned by bylaw that the rule is, as I walk closer to shore, if they could see my ankles, I would be arrested. That's the rule. And my ankles appear out of the water. And to put a cherry on this fiasco Sunday, the police chief in Coburg, can't remember his name, I think he's about like 6'2", he's got a full beard. He uses the gender pronouns he, him, Sheila. Just in case you thought a 6'2" police chief with a full beard might be a she, her, or a Zeezer, or a, you know, I don't know. I know there's like 84 different pronouns, maybe a spirit unicorn. So that's what's going on in Coburg. Wow, fun place, eh?
You know what, though? Beautiful downtown Coburg is where Trudeau got booed, but beautiful Coburg also produced beautiful Tamara Ugolini, who has a really great story of how she's so polite and authentic, but tenacious. And she's got I'm not going to throw to it because there's something else I want to talk about before we go. We'll end on some good news. But Tamara, friends, if you take a pop over to, well, you know what? Watch us on Rumble. The video's up on Rumble. Avoid YouTube at all costs. But she went to a Liberal Party event in Coburg, in her own hometown, where the former Liberal MP there knows Tamara's family by name. Her mom, her dad, Tamara knows her by name. They wouldn't let her in, and Tamara, being Tamara, she read the press release for the event backwards and forwards. The Liberals said that not only do they accommodate, do they allow media, they facilitate them. So not just accommodate them, but help you report. Except, I guess, if you're Tamara Ugolini and you want to ask a question. And they flat out said, well, if you were with Global or CTV, then that would be different. But since you're with Rebel News, no. And they said, we don't recognize you as media. And Tamara's like, well, who cares? I don't care if you recognize me, basically. I'm going to do my own thing. The last thing we need is recognition from Liberals to do our job, right? But It's a really great video. She handled it perfectly. It was just everything you know about Liberals, balanced with everything we know about Tamara Ugolini and her persistence in her hometown.
Do we have time, Mr. Producer, to throw to a clip of that? Because it is a great video. I don't think we've...
Even just the cold open.
Oh, okay. Let's give a very quick teaser of this video. As Sheila said, folks, it's wonderful, and you can watch it in full later, and then we'll get to Sheila's gracious good news.
That showed that you are for open and transparency, and you actually, the wording in there was that you facilitate media coverage, so you're not allowing us as independent journalists into this event?
You're not invited to this event, I'm sorry.
And the event, was it an invite-only event?
This is an event that you're not invited to.
Sorry. Minister Anand, I have a question for you. The Liberals are campaigning on openness and transparency, and I face barriers to get here as a woman trying to work. Will you give me 5 minutes of your time?
Well, I will say this. The minister has some taste in cars. That's a Cadillac CTS Coupe. I don't even know if they make it anymore. It's got one hell of a blind spot. I will say that, Sheila. And it looks like that's a fitting car for a minister because she seems to have a blind spot when it comes to a female journalist asking questions of her.
Yeah, and I think part of this announcement or whatever they were talking about there was about childcare and barriers to women in the workforce. And Tamara's like, I have a 5-month-old that I'm nursing at home, and I left my 5-month-old at home to be here to ask you a question and to do my job. And you have this soft gentleman asking as a bouncer or acting as a bouncer so that Tamara can't do her job. It's just a bunch of gross, but it's so typically Liberal. It was just perfect.
It was. And by the way, I can't help but think about the car too, Sheila. There's a V8 under that hood. Well, how come they're not driving around in electric cars or hybrids or plug-in hybrids? And they've always got a big V8 under the hood, whether it's a Suburban or a Cadillac. Right?
Yeah, that's for you to drive. That impractical car that can't get you anywhere. That's for you to drive. You see, they need to be able to make fast, reliable getaways. If a conservative is going to come ask them a question, and you can't do that in a little electric abomination.
That's right. No, these Liberals don't want to suffer from range anxiety. No, sir, not when there's pesky journalists like Tamara Ugolini asking insensitive and impolite questions. Oh, man, give me a break. What a bunch of hypocrites.
Tamara had some good questions too. We workshopped those questions for like an hour the night before. They were really good. It's too bad you didn't get to ask them.
Unbelievable. Now, Sheila, I believe you have some good news that you were teasing earlier.
Yeah, I do. Justin, I want to show the cold open for, I think it's Repair the Church. If you don't mind, we are doing something completely opposite of what the mainstream media is doing, which I am proud of because that seems to be the theme of this entire company that we work for. While everybody seems to be cheering on the destruction of churches, particularly on Indigenous land, we're doing something to fix that. Not only are we reporting on it, but Adam Sos has decided that he is going to make it his personal mission to help repair a church on Tsuut'ina land. So that's on a reserve just outside of Calgary. And the church needs some help and needs repairs. The church means a lot to the people in the community, which is something the mainstream media would not report on. They think that these churches are somehow just colonial artifacts that the people who live on the reserve don't want. That's not true. They love their churches, and we're going to help them. So if we could throw to the cold open of that, it's just wonderful. I'm so proud of this.
It's been really something. This church has had its days, and it's showing. I'm now seeing it. I even haven't been here for a while myself, but it's really showing. And it would be nice one day to see what small stuff we can do to maintain a face again for my grandpa's church.
As we've kind of seen, there's a bit of damage, there's some leaks. What would it mean to you and the community for us to take care of the roof and get everything back into working order?
Oh, it would be so great. It would be just awesome. We never had the money to renovate it or to fix it up, so we just try and keep it the best way we can.
So I'm here with Chief Roy Whitney, One Spot. You are the chief out here on the Tsuut'ina land.
Pleased to hear that this is an initiative that will help the community repair the church. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this with Rebel News.
With the help of our passionate and principled viewers at Rebel News, we are going to crowdfund a new roof for this church building. While radicals and progressives out there are attacking places of worship, we're going to do our very best to support those places of worship. If you want to help, go to repairthechurch.com.
You know, Sheila, to bring this show full circle, isn't it just unbelievable in terms of the Department of Perverse Irony, where you have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau basically inferring that Canada might fund a Taliban regime. This is a radical Islamist, violent terrorist group responsible for so much carnage, and yet won't even comment on, 57 churches, I think at last count, that have either been burned to the ground or vandalized or desecrated in such a way. We know that because when Drea Humphrey, our reporter out in British Columbia, tried to ask Justin Trudeau that a couple of weeks ago, she was actually manhandled, physically removed like a little doll out of the Prime Minister's way because these were too insensitive questions. Again, another almost peak insanity moment for me, Sheila.
Well, it not only has Justin Trudeau scarcely commented on this, all the people around him say, well, we can sort of understand how it's happening. We can sort of get it. We can sort of relate to the people who are committing the arson. Well, I can't, but I can relate to the Indigenous people who feel deeply about their faith because I share the same faith as them. And you know, I understand how important the local church is to them. And so I'm really proud that when Adam noticed that this was something that we could do something about, to keep them in their church, to keep them, to help them join together each week in some place that is their own, he stepped up and he started this crowdfunding effort. And if you'd like to help Adam, it's at repairthechurch.com. And he's putting a new roof on the church on Tsuut'ina land just outside of Calgary. And he has the full support of the congregation, diocese as well as the chief there. So this is not something we've inserted ourselves into. We've got a great roofing company that's coming in to help. There are other companies that we'll find out. We'll let you know about them as we go, who have said that, hey, we can help the church with this. We can fix this for the church. So it's really a good news story of a lot of people coming together to help First Nations people continue to stay in their churches while the world is cheering on the burning of them.
You know, and Sheila, isn't it so nice to see contractors coming out and saying, yeah, we'll put a roof on a church, as opposed to, putting a fence around a church to prevent the congregation from going to it, like Grace Life. So that is indeed some good news. And by the way, news you will not see reported anywhere in the mainstream media, because just like Justin Trudeau, to me, Sheila, the most underreported, overlooked story of 2021 so far is what's happening to these churches. It barely gets any publicity, and that is shameful.
Well, and we get a lot of heat from people I genuinely don't care about, who say, oh, you guys aren't reporters, you're activists. Well, we are reporters and we are activists, and this is the kind of activism we do. So if you don't like it, what does that say about you? We help the churches stay in the churches. We help the Christians in northern Iraq. This is what we do. And this is our kind of activism. And we're open and upfront about it, instead of being liberal activists and thinking that nobody notices, which is what the mainstream media does.
Indeed. Well, enough about us yammering on. I believe we have some super chats from our beloved audience.
We do. We have 4. We should get through them. And I know Justin has to go pretty quickly. So let's just get through.
He's always got to go quickly.
Yeah, well.
Did the lunch come in?
We've got a Rumble chat from Joyful from the Heart. We should write every Liberal MP what Trudeau is going to do to bring these Afghani people to safety. Yeah. Because the mainstream media certainly isn't going to ask him. I mean, how many Liberal events happened yesterday and nobody seemed to ask him, while these atrocious videos of people clinging to planes to get out of there and falling to their certain death. And Justin Trudeau told those people to go to the airport, and Canadian help never came. We've got a Rumble chat from MVP 93371. Saw a clip of Taliban soldiers laughing when asked about women's rights. Yeah, no kidding. Women's rights. They don't exist. They're chattel. It's nothing. Yes. Where are the feminists, by the way? Where are the feminists? This is supposed to be their issue, not mine.
If the phrase women's rights is a punchline to these guys, you think they're going to reform from within and be an inclusive, diverse governing body? It's unbelievable, Sheila.
Where are the women's marchers these days? They're marching in the streets because Donald Trump got elected. Yeah. The Taliban just took over an entire country. They're going to enslave 50% of the population because they're female. Where are you girls?
Oh,
nowhere.
Sheila,
silent.
I've heard from radical feminism that the burqa is a form of female empowerment, if you can imagine. Because it's the woman desexualizing her. She's not under the tyranny of big makeup, to put on a smiling face. So this prison is actually a symbol of empowerment. That's how crazy the left-wing feminist movement is right now, folks.
I'm obviously not under the tyranny of big makeup, and I don't have to wear a burqa. It's not a binary choice. I'm wearing I think it's a men's small t-shirt right now. You don't have to wear a burqa if you don't want to sexualize yourself, you insane hypocrite ladies. We've got a Rumble chat from Share21. He is passively naming the Taliban as the official government. Yeah, he definitely is. Because either you say they're not legitimate, or you say they are, but your silence also speaks volumes. And his way of dancing around that question without ever answering it says all we need to know.
Yeah, I wonder if Trudeau, if he has a state visit to Afghanistan in the near future, will he do the India thing, Sheila? Will he dress up as a Taliban terrorist to blend in and be diverse?
He'll wear a burqa just for diversity's sake.
That's right. He's a feminist. I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah, walk a mile in her shoes, as they say. We've got a rumble from Ryan Rosty, says Ezra's awesome. Well, you know what? I am sort of paid to think that, but I also would think that normally. So he is great, and he's great on the spot. And he did literally write the book on Omar Khadr. So for him to run into him at the airport, that was the hand of God at work right there.
Yeah, the only thing I would have done differently, because that was a brilliant video, is when Omar Khadr asked, do you want a selfie? I go, yeah. But then again, do you really want to get within arm's length of a murderer? Maybe not.
Oh, sorry, lost you guys for a second there.
Oh, I think Sheila has frozen. And, and she's back again.
I'm back. I'm back. It left off with you saying only one thing I would have done differently, and I just assumed that Justin cut your mic.
No, what I said
you
for
don't have advice to give the boss.
No, for your benefit, Sheila, what I said was that when Omar Khadr offered the opportunity to have a selfie with them, maybe Ezra should have taken him up on the offer. But then again, do you really want to be within an arm's length reach of a convicted terrorist and murderer? Probably not.
Yeah, as long as that was a cell phone and not some mechanism to detonate a bomb somewhere.
True enough.
And I think we're all cut up. We're 10 minutes past the hour, and Justin, I know you have to go.
Well, there you go. Well, folks, thank you so much for those who contributed those super chats, and my thanks goes to my lovely co-host Sheila Gunn Reid and the good Justin. I'm David Menzies signing off. We'll be back here on Thursday. In the meantime, stay sane.